Hello and welcome to this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network, and this month our guest, State Representative Paul Schmid of Westport, back again. Good to see you.
Jim, it's great to be here, and it feels to me as though the last time we talked we were still fighting that COVID, and I think you were sitting over at this end.
I was down the beach, and you were on West Beach. I was on East Beach, so yeah.
We were doing our best to get through it, and we did, thank God.
We've done well. I mean, I think the state, the last time you were here, the State House was closed. It's not fully open yet, but it's getting there.
It is, and we've learned how to do things remotely, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people like is being able to have committee hearings both in person and giving people the option of speaking from New Bedford or from Springfield, rather than having to go into Boston. You can really feel as though you're part of the process without fighting the traffic, finding a parking space, and so on.
One of the things you were looking forward to, I remember the last time you were here talking about, is actually talking with your colleagues. Not that you weren't talking, but face-to-face talking instead of the remote or the phone calls or the text message. You were saying the last time that makes a huge difference trying to get policy or things done.
Yes, it does. Nothing beats that in-person, face-to-face. And looking at somebody's face on the screen in a little postage stamp size just doesn't get it done. So we're all glad that we can be back in.
The staffs are back too, correct?
Yes, they are.
Right.
On a limited basis.
Yeah. So the last time here we were talking about, because I know it was in the planning stage, we touched upon it, but we didn't know what was going to happen. The redistricting that came about, your district was tweaked a little bit. You're still in the north end of New Bedford.
Yeah, I think tweak is the right word for it.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's not too much.
I'm still in the north end of New Bedford. I don't have quite as many precincts, but I'm there.
Right.
And I also pick up 2 precincts in Acushnet.
So overall, you've got Westport, Freetown, Acushnet, and New Bedford.
And Fall River.
And Fall River.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, your district is still really diverse because you've got 2 urban areas in Fall River and New Bedford, and you've really got 3 rural communities that you're representing in the Acushnet, Freetown, and Westport. A lot of issues, although as you were saying off camera, a lot of the issues that Acushnet and the rural districts are dealing with, the cities are dealing with too.
Yes, the old feeling that, oh, that's New Bedford, that doesn't affect us in Dartmouth or Fairhaven or Mattapoisett. No, it's the issues that New Bedford and Fall River face are the same ones that Somerset, Westport, Acushnet face. But you're right, I do have a wonderfully diverse district. I love the urban issues in New Bedford and Fall River, and I also love the Westport, Freetown, Acushnet issues. Those 3 communities are all rural. Westport and Acushnet are very farming oriented. Freetown, of course, is the bioreserve, and they face the issues that all small towns face, trying to provide the services on a limited budget.
And as you were talking about off camera too, we were talking about the budget itself. It's in conference committee right now, and as you said, New Bedford should do pretty well with the budget as it stands right now as you're looking at it.
You bet.
But the communities, as you were saying, the smaller communities have limited resources in the state budget for them, and their decisions are tougher because it's a smaller pool of money.
That's right. They're trying to basically provide the same kinds of services that we do in New Bedford, but with a much more limited budget. How do you take care of the cemeteries with just one or two persons? How do you keep the streets clean and so on?
But you said you were happy overall with the way your district looked in the general budget.
Yes, New Bedford, I think, really comes out looking very well. Number one, we will get a big increase in our school budget. There'll be an extra $2,500 per student. This reflects the 2 years' worth of the Student Opportunity Act,
right,
where we committed to bringing the per student spending in New Bedford up from about $13,000 up to about $20,000 over the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do it in last year's budget. So in this year's budget, FY23, there'll be a 2-year step up, which amounts to, as I said, a couple of $1,000s per student. That's big.
Yeah.
That's big. And secondly, the Senate, in their budget, put in a 5.7% increase in unrestricted government aid for the communities. And you know, as you know, Jim, that's the money that pays for police, firefighters, public works, and so on. So I hope that the conference committee, where the budget is right now, I hope the conference committee will accept the Senate's budget of a 5.7% increase. That'll really help.
Do you find that the delegation, you and your colleagues from around here, are you still, in a lot of ways, are you fighting? I don't want to say fighting, that might be the right word, but you're battling for money with other communities across the state, and you're trying to show the need here. And a lot of people would say this area has been neglected a long time.
Yes.
Do you find that that happens, that you really have to make a case? And like I said, it's not fighting is maybe not the right word physically, but you're fighting for those dollars with your colleagues.
Well, the pie is a certain size.
Right.
And the South Coast has its needs, South Coast Rail, education, economic development, and so on. Western Massachusetts, Pittsfield, Springfield, they have their issues. I think the one thing about the Massachusetts budget is that Boston is both the economic center and the political center. And it just has more punch,
right,
and more reps and more senators. So I think all of us outside Boston fight hard every day to make sure that our district is considered when people in Boston are making decisions.
And it's interesting you said that, because I can recall that you would wonder why a New Bedford representative was aligning with a Springfield representative. Theoretically, they have nothing in common, but really they have everything in common.
Well, we do, yeah, because we want to make sure that the T doesn't get all of our transportation money. We want to make sure that regional bus service in Springfield, regional bus service in New Bedford gets covered, along with taking care of all the issues that the MBTA has.
Are you concerned as you look at the way the budget process has gone, and obviously you were dealing with it through the spring and what have you, the way that costs and inflation and things are going right now, that things might be a little off, really, even when it's passed, things that you didn't plan on are taking place right now, cost of services,
Sure.
fuel, that sort of thing.
Sure. That's absolutely right, and that's why I'm so hopeful that our budget will include the Senate's 5.7% increase in unrestricted government aid, because costs, services, payrolls are rising faster than the 2.7% increase than the House put in. And we have to, towns and cities are getting stretched by that. It's just costing more to provide the same services. And we all look to the state for help. So I'm glad that the Senate budget has it in it.
What, because that's the biggest issue. When people are talking right now, they're talking about inflation and the cost of gas and the cost of food, and everything's up, like you just said.
You experience it every day at the pump, don't you?
Exactly. Is there anything really the legislature can do to help alleviate the cost of that?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about eliminating temporarily the state gas tax. That's 25 cents a gallon. And
I know the governor said it's a gimmick.
We've looked at it and we've concluded that it probably won't provide the benefit people think. And that's because that tax gets paid by the producer, by the ESSOs of this world. And we have no legal way of forcing the local gas pump, the local Cumbies. If we take that tax off ESSO, we have no way of forcing Cumberlands to reduce their price at the pump by 25 cents. So we're looking at other ways to help people, and we want to, and the money is there. So I'm absolutely certain that before July 31st, which is when we conclude our session, there will be a package of help for the taxpayers.
Well, I saw that in the paper recently, too, that the Speaker Marino, Senate President Spilka have talked about sort of tax breaks.
Yes.
Very generic. I mean, there's no specifics, but they've talked about tax breaks in general before July 31st. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes, and right now we can't be too specific because the work is getting done, and just how it works out, but there will be help for the taxpayers. Yeah.
One of the big things that's come up over the last few months too was the driver's license issue regarding illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants.
Yep. Driver's license for undocumented.
That has passed. Obviously, the House and the Senate. The governor vetoed it. Overridden. Looks like it's going to become. Obviously, I don't know when it actually goes into effect. Must be July.
Next year.
Okay. But it's curious. I did see, it was actually in yesterday's paper, that they've got a petition out now that they're trying to get the signatures to take the decision away from the legislature.
To put it on the ballot.
Correct.
Yeah.
I guess your thought, because obviously that impacts your district.
Yeah. So I worked a lot with my police chiefs, and I found that they felt that in the name of public safety, we should be licensing everybody who drives. And let's face it, we all know that undocumented people, first of all, they're undocumented because Washington hasn't done anything on immigration in the last 10 years. So if Washington had been doing its job, many of these folks would be properly documented. So, but they're not. They're working. And they are the folks who are doing the work, just like all immigrants have in our country's history. They're doing the work that we don't want to do, working in meat plants.
The fish processing.
Fish processing, landscaping, all the things that it's hard to find people to do. So they're working. And to get to work, we don't have a very good bus system. To get to work, they drive. The only issue is, because they're not licensed, they don't have insurance. So the police chief said, much better to license the people who are driving to make sure that they've been trained and they have insurance. But, they said, the issue of their documentation, proving they are who they say they are, that's very important to us. And a bunch of us in the South Coast voted against the bill in its first draft and said, we can't do this, because it was very loose on the documentation that people had to provide. So as the bill then ultimately came before us, it required undocumented people to provide current passports
you had to show
or
who
consular
you were.
ID, so that they are, we know, the police chiefs know, they are who they say they are.
And that was one of my questions, was liability too, and the insurance issues. I mean, it's not just getting the license. You've got to be, if you're going to be riding in a vehicle, you've got to have the insurance.
Yes.
Because what's the point if you don't have the insurance? God forbid you're in an accident, it's really no help to you.
Right. And some people have I think, rightly said, well, yeah, does this allow them to vote? No.
Well, that was the governor's concern when he vetoed it, that it would make it easy for those who are getting the license to register to vote.
Yeah.
But you're saying, obviously, and others have said, no, that's not going to happen.
No, currently we have several groups of people who have driver's license but who are not allowed to vote. If you're 16 and 17, you can have a driver's license, but you don't vote. And folks who are on a green card, they're here legally, they're working legally, but they're not citizens, they can't vote. They can get driver's license. So this has been an established practice that certain groups of people who have the driver's license are not allowed to vote.
Right.
No. End of story on that, I think.
And yeah, so you're comfortable with the legislation that ultimately passed?
I am. I think it's a matter of public safety, and we can make very certain that license does not equal vote.
Another question I was talking about it with you off camera, as you and I always have a pre-meeting before you talk about, but there was advocates were looking for lawmakers to push a plan to ease hunger for college students. And then I was thinking of the federal government program, which is going to end for the lunch programs or the food programs, really for school children. It's
such a travesty.
So I'm just curious. I mean, and as you mentioned to me, it's like you said, Jim. It's everywhere right now. Yeah. Can the legislature look at, and I know this is a passion for you because you do a lot with the farming and getting fresh food out for people who need it.
I do.
With the farmers markets.
Hasn't it been wonderful how farmers have really stepped up during the COVID to provide that local healthy food?
So what kind of, or what can the legislature do? Because I don't know the costs of this. I just know that the federal government says, well, we're ending the program. Because right now, my understanding is you can get a breakfast, and it's not eggs and whatever. It's cereal or yogurt or whatever in the morning.
But it's a healthy meal.
Correct, and a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
And the lunch. And as you were telling me off camera, for a lot of kids, and it's not just New Bedford, you're talking the rural communities too that you represent. For a lot of kids, this is their meals.
They did not get fed at home before they came to school.
Correct. So again, I know this is something that you are passionate about. Do you think the legislature will take action to sort of address these hunger issues? And like I said, you mentioned to me off camera, adults right now are facing that with inflation and the issues that are going on.
Sure. So the legislature, in our budget, we do provide, if Washington stops that school program, we do provide for picking it up on the state level. And that's a start. And as you've pointed out, just because you've gone from high school to community college doesn't mean that your hunger issues went away.
Right.
And we should be thinking about the college level day. We want to make sure that our kids get a good education, be it at community college or at UMass Dartmouth, and having enough to eat is an important base foundation for education. And then, of course, as we were talking, we have to look at the general, we have to always be aware of the general population, which during COVID experienced hunger problems.
Unbelievable.
And
you talked about that last time you were here, because you were talking about the farmers market, but the increase in the demand at local food pantries has been through the roof.
It has. And now that a lot of people are back at work, it doesn't seem to have gone away at all. And the food pantries tell us they're experiencing the same number of requests that they have. Maybe it's that people understand that the food pantry is there for them. Maybe there's a little less of a feeling of reluctance. I know a lot of people who have said, oh, I would never go into that food pantry. I wouldn't feel right. Well, if you're hungry, it's
right
there for you.
And it's good. I mean, that I didn't know about the legislature and with the federal program, but as you said, looking at the college thing, as you know, the college years ended, it might be something to take a look at down the road. I don't know if you could do anything in the private colleges, but certainly, like you said, at the UMass Dartmouth or the Bristol Community College, things that you guys have some purview over,
Yes.
that might be something to address.
Yes. There's going to be a lot to be considered in the next 6 weeks before we break.
Well, that's the thing too. Is I mean, obviously we've got 8 minutes left here, so this conversation's flown today. You've only got 6 weeks left, and you've got to prioritize a lot of stuff. And I would assume there's so many unknowns you're dealing with, just because of what the outside forces are. So how do you think right now you and your colleagues are looking at the issues right now? Well, I don't know. I mean, you look at hunger, and to me, that seems like an obvious one you got to address in general.
Well, let's be, as legislators, we're practical. We've got 3 bills that are in conference committee right now. That's our budget.
Yep.
That's sports betting, and the bill that the Senate passed this fall and that the House will take up today on mental health.
All 3 issues have been really, well documented. Let's put it that way.
Very well documented, and right now 2 of them are in conference committee, and the mental health after today, I'm quite sure, will go to a conference committee. So we're first of all, we're focused on those 3 issues because they've been vetted, they've been voted on, and now it's just a matter of making sure that the House and the Senate versions can be meshed, can be lined up. And by the way, the mental health bill that we're going to vote on today is a good one. What we try to establish is recognizing that mental health should be treated in the same way as physical health.
And obviously mental health right now has been such a huge issue because of the gun issue, the gun debate right now. And mental health has been a huge part of that whole debate, in that
Yes.
a lot of people want that. A lot of people say that needs to be dealt with.
Yes, and of course we passed the red flag law a couple of years ago, which allows the court to take guns away from somebody who it considers to be mentally unstable. And that's one of the issues that Washington is considering to put in their bill.
Well, and it's, Massachusetts has been put up by some as a model that the country should follow. And I'm curious with you, because your district represents those the rural communities, which hold more gun advocates versus the urban. So it's, when I look at you got a balancing act, but I mean, I still think that when I'm out there, that there are gun advocates who want responsible legislation too.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
And I think that perception's not out there for many.
And most gun owners will say, yeah, there's no reason for us to be able to have an assault rifle. I mean, that's a killing machine. And large capacity magazines. We all know what those are. That's not for hunting.
Yeah.
So they would agree that restrictions have to be put in for public safety. And I think most people feel that here in Massachusetts we've done a pretty good job of allowing people to their right to bear arms, but also putting in sensible, common sense restrictions.
And the mental health aspect now,
that's part of it.
The bill that you're looking at right now, not that it deals with the gun legislation or the gun issue per se, but this is just separate, that we need to put more focus on mental health here in Massachusetts.
Yes, we need to accept that mental health is just as important to us as our physical health. For instance, we require that everybody have access to a yearly mental health checkup, just as you go into your physician, to check
get
out
all the
I'm doing that next week, so I'm
yeah.
So we ought to have everybody have a mental checkup, and the insurance company should pay for it. So those are the kinds of things that we have in this bill. The Senate has already passed a bill, has many of the same things in it. So over the next 6 weeks, we'll try to put those two bills together and really make Massachusetts a leader in mental health.
Got about 2 minutes left here. I just want to give you a chance too. So, not that that's a long time, but some of your priorities here that you're looking at specifically in the next 6 weeks or so before the session ends.
Well, as you mentioned, I've always been a big advocate for supporting our farming community and recognizing that our farmers are very important to getting healthy local food into underserved areas. One of the issues in farming is that it's getting harder to find farmland.
Yeah.
And we have a system in Massachusetts where farmland can get taxed at its ag value rather than its development value, and that really helps the farmer stay in farming. But we have in our Constitution that the minimum acreage required for this is 5 acres. Well, that was good 100 years ago when we were primarily dairy farms that need a lot of land. But now, as we've transitioned to growing more vegetables and fruits, smaller parcels of land are needed. And so I'm working with the Speaker, and I appreciate his help, to reduce the minimum required for ag land from 5 acres to 2 acres. And we'd like to make that even smaller in urban environments like New Bedford, because we know that urban agriculture is getting more and more popular. So we'd like to try to save those smaller lots where you see vegetables being grown all around New Bedford.
Is it true though too, as you're looking at your district and even in Dartmouth too, that the farm land, the available land, is diminishing? That people are buying out for development or what have you?
Well, that's certainly been the case for years and years. I'm happy to say that right now, for instance, in Westport, we've been able to pretty well draw the line, and we have a wonderful active land trust that in the past couple of years has been able to buy 6 farms that otherwise would have been sold for development, put a conservation restriction on them so they'll stay in farming, and then resell them to young farmers at a price that the farmers, young folks, can afford.
Because I mean, if they're starting out, they're not going to have that the cash to get it right off the bat.
Right.
Like buying a house, you're not going to be able to buy a beautiful, not that you can't buy a beautiful house, but a big house. You got to start small and work your way up.
You start with a starter.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So that's the kind of effort that's going on down here in the South Coast. I'm very optimistic about the future of farming. Thanks for asking about that, Jim.
And the wind farm, the wind industry still keeps going here, and I know that you've been working on that too.
Yeah, a lot of well, over in Somerset, the company that builds the cables for bringing the energy from the wind turbines offshore back to land, they're going to put $200 million in a plant, employ 200 people. That's the kind of jobs that you're going to see as a result of offshore wind.
It's good seeing you.
Always great to be here, Jim. Thank you very much. We always have a lot to talk about.
There's a lot. It just flew right by. That's going to do it for this edition of the Beacon Hill Report. I'm Jim Marshall of the New Bedford Cable Network. State Representative Paul Schmid, our guest. Thanks to him. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.